we're here today to talk about pipeline safety and Line 5 in particular. And so I'm basically here to talk about the resolution that was introduced regarding our request to the governor and the attorney general to shut down Line 5 because of the risk that it poses to our Great Lakes. Before I go on, though, I do want to recognize my colleague Robert Wittenberg, who was the lead co-sponsor on that bill and did a lot of work on it last year. We also have a number of our other colleagues here, some of whom are going to speak, and so I will yield the floor to them in a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We got more folks coming in too. Come on in, folks. So Line 5 is of crucial concern right now. We have a pipeline that is over 60 years old, running under the Straits of Mackinac, as you can see on the graphic to my right. Our Great Lakes are our prized possession in Michigan. They are what we rely on. They are the water supply for many communities around this state. And we need to make sure that we are protecting the lakes and we're protecting the water supply that sustains us in Michigan. What we can't do is allow for a company that has a pretty dirty track record to continue operating an outdated pipeline under our Great Lakes. So all we're asking for is for us to take a step back and shut that line down before a disaster happens. Because we know that once a disaster happens, we are not prepared to address it. Now, there are a number of concerns that people have brought up, and I want to make sure that we acknowledge those. We want to make sure that our friends in the UP have access to clean and reliable energy to heat their homes. We want to make sure that our friends in the labor community have decent, good-paying union jobs here in Michigan. And we believe that we can do all that and still protect our Great Lakes. And that's why we're here today. That's why we're advocating the way that we are. And that's why many people are here today in Lansing talking to their legislators and asking for them to step up and do what's right. So at this point, I'm going to hand it off to Liz Kirkwood from For the Love of Water, who is going to be talking about the Line 5 issue as well. And then we're going to hear from some of my other colleagues who are going to be talking about pipeline safety as well. So thank you all for coming out.
Good afternoon. It is a real pleasure to be here with all of you. And I'm Liz Kirkwood. I'm Executive Director of FLOW for Love of Water. We're a Great Lakes Water Law and Policy Center. And we are part of the Oil and Water Don't Mix Coalition, as well as a number of my colleagues here in the audience, including David Holtz from Sierra Club, Sean Brady from Clean Water Action, Kate Madigan from the Michigan Environmental Council, Mariah Uretza from Food and Water Watch, and over 100 citizen lobbyists. Thank you all for being here today. So on behalf of my colleagues, myself at Oil and Water Don't Mix, I'd like to extend a very warm welcome and thank you to all of our elected officials and lawmakers for addressing one of the most pressing issues here in our state, Line 5. So just to kick things off, we would like to thank Representative Rabhi and all the House co-sponsors for introducing House Resolution 51, urging the governor and the attorney general to exercise their legal authority as public trustees to terminate the 1953 easement and shut down Enbridge Line 5 in the Straits of Mackinac. This resolution is critical in establishing accountability at the top leadership level here in Michigan with our governor and AG, and in initiating this necessary decommissioning process of these 64-year-old pipelines that are in the heart of the Great Lakes. When it comes to the Great Lakes, there is no margin of error that we can afford to risk. We have 20% of the world's fresh surface water. We have an incredible duty to safeguard these sacred waters. And so we fully support this resolution because it focuses on the state as the trustee who holds the legal authority to enforce the express terms of the easement and for protecting the Great Lakes for the public and the common good. Enbridge's right to operate the Straits pipeline dates back to this 1953 conditional easement with the state of Michigan. 8 known violations of by Enbridge of that easement agreement involve missing anchors, standards of care, structural integrity, missing coding, inadequate oil spill response plan, and insurance liability. Just last month, Enbridge's own report showed that the pipeline's anti-corrosive coating has not been maintained, and there are at least 19 areas on the pipeline that the industry calls holidays that are missing. The Great Lakes are no place for an oil spill, and the governor and the AG should immediately begin this process of decommissioning by notifying Enbridge that they are doing so as a result of their violations. More than 20 organizations, 70 municipalities, townships, counties, and tribal governments. These, remember, are the sovereign waters and treaty rights, the spawning grounds of the whitefish in the Straits, and 250 businesses have called on Governor Snyder and Attorney General Schuette to begin the process of decommissioning. Immediately following the press conference, we invite you all to walk with us, and as we deliver over 70 community and tribal resolutions, over 1,000 petition postcards and letters addressed to the Attorney General and Governor requesting the state of Michigan to decommission Line 5. Thank you so much for your time and commitment to protecting our greatest and most vital resource, the Great Lakes.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Cochran. I'm state representative of the 67th House District. Enbridge Line 5 pipeline has allowed millions of gallons of crude oil and natural gas liquids to flow around the state for more than a half a century. In that time, the pipeline has naturally deteriorated, as all infrastructure does with age. As a result, my colleagues, environmental stakeholders, and concerned citizens have rightly called upon the question of the integrity of Line 5. When the state of Michigan granted this easement to Enbridge to operate Line 5 pipeline in the Straits of Mackinac, the pipelines were in arguably better condition than they are today. Since the protective anti-corrosion coating of the pipeline has deteriorated so much, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency in 2016 identified at least 19 areas of deterioration of that coating. Going unchecked, this allows for hazardous chemicals to leach into the Straits of Mackinac. The pipeline must also have supportive anchors attached at least every 75 feet. However, since 1979, inspections have found that unsupported spans exceed this length. And what's worse, this would not even be the first time that an Enbridge pipeline burst in Michigan waters. In 2010, as we all know, Enbridge Line 6B pipeline in Kalamazoo ruptured and burst, resulting in 843,000 gallons of crude tar sands oil spilling into the Kalamazoo River. This is the worst environmental disaster in the continent of the United States ever. Happened here in Michigan. Residents had to evacuate their homes. Wildlife whose habitats depended upon the river were threatened by thick oil was running through the waters. This was even the largest, most expensive land oil spill in the United States history. It took 2 years of round-the-clock cleanup to adequately address the spill. The spill occurred after a section of pipeline burst, which Enbridge had known since 2005 was cracking and corroding, yet decided not to inspect it. After only 7 years, have we still not learned our lesson? Can't the governor and the attorney general recognize these signs and heed the caution in face of such a tremendous potential catastrophe that would occur if Line 5 were to burst? In 2010, the oil spill was contained to 39 miles of the Kalamazoo River. If Line 5 were to rupture, there's no telling how much of our state waters would be contaminated by these chemicals, waters that surround our state, upon which our very livelihood depends. Learning our lessons from 2010 and recognizing the signs again, now with Line 5, my colleagues and I have introduced legislation that will work to prevent such unsafe pipeline conditions from being allowed. I hope that we can get a hearing on these bills and have meaningful discussion with our colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers about why this is so important to legislate safety of pipelines. Until then, I hope that Governor Rick Snyder and Attorney General Bill Schuette would recognize the dangers of keeping this line open and will work to shut it down until further studies can be determined the safety of these pipelines. We simply cannot gamble with our state's health and well-being. At this point, I'd like to turn this over to Representative Kristy Pagan. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Kristy Pagan, State Representative representing Western Wayne County, Canton, Van Buren Township, and the City of Belleville. Since 1953, the state of Michigan has had an easement with Enbridge Energy to allow its pipeline to exist beneath our waters as long as the company abides by certain parameters. In 2014, Enbridge was found in violation of this agreement, which has allowed the integrity of the pipeline to deteriorate. This is why my colleagues and I will introduce a package of bills to enforce specific guidelines and ensure that the pipelines are installed and maintained safely for the surrounding waterways, wildlife, and communities. We all enjoy having access to our abundant natural resources and lush waterways, which are indeed a unique quality of Michigan. But we must ensure and protect our precious waterways before a crisis occurs. Unfortunately, we've seen it happen in other areas of our state, like Representative Cochran described. We no longer can wait till another disaster occurs. We have to respond now. This time we can be prepared and avoid allowing a tragedy to occur. We must work proactively to keep our water clean, the people of Michigan healthy and safe, and our economy strong. This means passing legislation that ensures that safety of not only our own infrastructure, but that which surrounds us, and the safety of which can derail our entire state. For example, according to a study conducted by the University of Michigan Water Center, more than 700 miles of Great Lakes shorelines could potentially be vulnerable to an oil spill if the pipeline under the Straits of Mackinac breaks. My colleagues and I are introducing legislation that focuses on pipeline safety because it's time for our state to step up and prevent Michigan from facing another costly and dangerous crisis. Michigan residents deserve better. They deserve to know that their state is working to protect them from tragic consequences of an unchecked and unsafe pipeline. This is why our bill package is so important. 20% of our world's fresh water is right here in our Great Lakes. They provide a vast value to our state, and they are deeply seated in our state's culture, our wildlife, and our economy. And we cannot continue to practice the practice of waiting for an emergency to happen before we act. So it's important that we do everything possible so that we can preserve and protect our most precious natural resources for now and for future generations to come. Thank you.
So I want to thank everybody again for coming out, and I'm going to start wrapping things up. But before I do, I just want to acknowledge a couple other of my colleagues that are standing here with us today. We have Representative Terry Sabo from the Muskegon area, and then we have, thank you. And also please recognize Representative Kevin Hertel from Macomb County. So it's an honor to stand up here with so many great leaders who are fighting for our Great Lakes, who are fighting for our environment. I'm going to go kind of off script here for my closing because this is an emotional issue for me. I grew up in Michigan, and I remember as a child going to the Great Lakes, going to the beaches, and spending my summers playing in the waters on Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Superior. I visited Santa Monica in California not too long ago, or Santa Barbara, I'm sorry. And there was an oil rig just out of the coast that you could see from the beach. There was also residue from an oil spill that had happened the year before I had come. That was still in the sand. I still found beads of black oil in the sand. There were entire areas of the beach that were closed off that were just black with oil that you couldn't go to. To think about that on a beach in Lake Michigan or on a beach in Lake Huron, that hits home for me. And that's something that as a Michigander, I cannot accept. And so this fight is personal, and I think it's personal for a lot of Michiganders. So when we work together, I think that we can find a solution to all of the different issues that people have. We can support our friends in the Upper Peninsula. We can support our friends who are looking for jobs in renewable energy and in the energy sector. We can make sure that we're supporting labor, that we're supporting all Michiganders, and we can protect our Great Lakes, protect the wonderful resources that we enjoyed as kids, so that many generations to come, they'll look back on our efforts and they will appreciate the work that we've done to protect the environment so that they can enjoy it too. Thank you all for coming out.